Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the City of Mesa Planning and Zoning Board public hearing for Wednesday, August 14th, 2019. Go ahead and call the meeting to order. The first item on the agenda is to take action on all consent agenda items. So if you are here today to speak about any item on the agenda that's indicated on the agenda with an asterisk, you need to fill out one of these blue cards right here as soon as possible and get it to one of our staff members. We've got quite a few already. If anyone is filling out ones, could you just raise your hand? So, okay, we have one gentleman in the back that's filling out a card, so we'll wait for you to fill that out and bring that up to staff. All right. 6.
2 projects, a 4C and 4B.
Okay. 4. Yeah, so far we have blue cards for items 4B and 4C, so we'll pull those 2 off the consent agenda. And we'll wait just a minute for the folks in the back. Oh, yes, thank you. Yes, so 5A will also come off because it's a companion case to item 4C. Thank you. All right, that's a 4B also. Okay, so just to make sure everybody knows, we're taking off items 4B, 4C, and 5A off the consent agenda. Board member Deanna Villanueva Saucedo has agreed to read the consent agenda for us.
8 minutes from the July 10th, 2019 study session and regular public hearing. Case ZON 19-00308, District 4, within the 200 through 300 blocks of South Extension Road West Side, located east of Alma School Road and north of Broadway Road, site plan modification. Request will allow for the expansion of an existing industrial development. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions.
Can you turn the volume up a little bit?
ZON 19-00345, District 6, within the 7,200 blocks of South Ellsworth Road West Side and the 9,100 block of East Pecos Road South Side, located at the southwest corner of Pecos Road and Ellsworth Road, site plan review and special use permit. Request will allow for the development of a convenience store with associated fuel station. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions. ZON 19-00406, District 1, within the 2,000 block of West Riverview Auto Drive West Side and within the 2,000 block of West Cubs Way North Side, located south of the 202 Red Mountain Freeway and west of Dobson Road, site plan review. Request will allow for the development in an office building and parking structure. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions. ZON 19-00304, District 6, within the 6,000 through 6,300 blocks of South Power Road, located south of Williams Field Road between the northbound and southbound lanes of Power Road, rezoned from RM4BIZ and LCBIZ-CUP to RM4PAD and site plan review. Request will allow for the multiple residence development. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions. ZON 19-00403, District 5, within the 5,600 block of East Longbow Parkway South Side, located north of McDowell Road and west of Recker Road, council use permit to allow hotel use in the Airport Overflight Area 2, AOA-2, a bonus intensity zone overlay, BIZ, to allow modifications to the light industrial development standards and site plan review. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions. That concludes all of the consent agenda items.
Thank you very much. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I second that.
Okay, everyone please vote. Okay.
Aye.
Thank you, Board Member Allen. Okay, so the consent agenda passes unanimously. Now we'll move on to the regular agenda. We'll wait just a minute until the crowd clears out a bit. Okay. This is, I missed the opportunity. I missed the opportunity to use the gavel to the gentleman in the.
Get the guy with the tie.
Call the meeting to order.
Which one?
All right, let's move on to item 4B. It's case ZON 19-00322 in District 3 within the 1600 through 1700 blocks of South Dobson Road and within the 2000 block of West Isabella Avenue, located west of Dobson Road and south of the US 60 on approximately 10 acres. The request is a rezone from LCPAD to RM-4-PAD and a site plan review to allow for the development of a multiple residence development. The staff planner is Mr. Evan Balmer. There you go.
This is case ZON 19-00322. As you mentioned, it is a rezoning request. It is currently the Dobson Ranch Inn located at Dobson and the US 60 freeway. It is just adjacent on the west side. We have some condominiums. On the south side is the Dobson Ranch residential development. And the east side, we have some commercial development and some existing multi-residence. As I mentioned, this is a rezoning request from limited commercial with a planned area development overlay to multi-residence RM4 with a planned area development overlay. And this would allow the development of a multi-residence complex. Here's the applicant's site plan. There are a total of 12 buildings on the site. There are 5 4-story buildings and 3 3-story buildings kind of oriented in the center of the development. Access to the site would utilize existing access along Dobson Road and Isabella. The general plan designation is neighborhood suburban. If this map was a little bit larger, you could see that there are some pockets of mixed-use activity district, as well as specialty. This is just south of Banner Desert and Mesa Community College. The neighborhood designation, the purpose is to provide a place for people to live where they can feel secure and enjoy their surroundings. The suburban subtype is predominantly 1- and 2-story development, although 3- and 4-story development and higher density is expected at appropriate locations such as arterial interchanges. When staff gets an application, we review it against the general plan. Chapter 15 of the general plan has specific criteria that we use to review these applications. And a lot of them are, is it consistent with the intent and the direction of the general plan? Is it consistent with the sub-area plan, in this case, the neighborhood suburban designation? Is it consistent with standards and guidelines of that neighborhood suburban? And where this development, we really took a hard look at it, was will the development strengthen the character of the surrounding community? And that can be accomplished in a number of ways, one of which is removing development that is deteriorated and doesn't really contribute to a high quality surrounding. With the case of the Dobson Ranch Inn, it has been there for many, many years, and it was very popular. It has since had declining folks staying there. It's not quite as busy as it used to be. And there have been a few issues with the site. So this proposal really kind of fits in with that section of the general plan. As I mentioned, the applicant is also requesting a planned area development overlay, which is some deviations from development standards. In this instance, they're asking for an increased height, and the maximum height on this proposal is 52 feet, and that is those 5 4-story buildings I mentioned, which are oriented in the middle of the site. They're also asking for reductions in the building and landscape setbacks, primarily along the north of the side of the property adjacent to the US 60 and the west side of the property adjacent to the existing condominiums, excuse me. They are also asking for reductions to private open space, both the overall size and the minimum dimensions. There are 5 different building types within this property, and they all feature different balconies. The majority of the site, actually 62% of the buildings, of the units are studio and 1-bedroom. So those might have a little smaller balcony, while the 2 bedrooms would have a balcony that could exceed these minimum dimensions. They're also asking for a reduction in the required parking from 2.1 spaces per unit to 1.6 spaces per unit. They did include a study from a traffic engineer who analyzed the parking and how it kind of fits in with what is actually utilized at current developments. And the 1.6 seems to be in line with that, with what they're seeing elsewhere. In exchange for deviations from code for the planned area development, The applicant is providing higher quality building elevations and some higher quality recreational amenities. Everyone is familiar with the site on Dobson and the 60. It's a very prominent intersection in Mesa, and staff and the developer have really worked to kind of bring up the level of quality with these buildings to make it something that really stands out at this intersection. So the applicant has been very responsive to staff's comments and has incorporated additional building materials and has really worked to bring a high quality development to this very prominent intersection. This did go to the design review board at their June meeting, and the applicant received some feedback from the DRB about including more materials and maybe varying the planes of the buildings and things like that. And the applicant has done a good job of taking those comments and making changes to the elevations to reflect those. The applicant has also done extensive citizen participation. They mailed letters to property owners within 1,000 feet of the site. Also had a neighborhood meeting in June that was very well attended as far as neighborhood meetings go. There were 37 residents in attendance. I bullet pointed some of the comments from the residents. A lot of it had to do with increased traffic at the development, the location of the 4-story buildings. There was some concern about the residents at this property utilizing the Dobson Ranch amenities, the timing of construction, parking requirements, things along those lines. I was also contacted by 2 residents via the phone who opposed the development, mostly citing traffic concerns and then the use of the Dobson Ranch amenities by potential residents at this development. With that, staff has reviewed the applicant's request and found it to be in conformance with the general plan as well as the residential criteria, the site plan review criteria, and the planned area development criteria of the zoning ordinance. And I would be happy to take any questions the board has.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for our staff at this point?
We have some blue cards to be read.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why don't we hear those comments before?
Okay. Well, I think what we'll do is we'll invite the applicant up, and then we'll see if we have any questions of staff and the applicant then, and then we'll open up to the public for comments.
They magically control this. I never know how this works. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. Brendan Ray, 702 East Osborne, here on behalf of Alliance Residential. I have a number of the team members here tonight that if I'm unable to answer any questions, hopefully they will. But as you are well aware, this Alliance Residential is the proposed developer of this site. If you're not familiar with Alliance, they are a Phoenix-based business that has been developing high-quality multifamily communities in the Phoenix metropolitan area and throughout the country for a considerable number of years. And they are proposing to redevelop this site with Broadstone Dobson Ranch. As Evan indicated, we have worked hand in glove with staff from the moment we started talking with them because we knew the high-profile nature of this site being the Dobson Ranch Inn, and I remember as a kid driving by it, and it was once a gem of this area, but as Evan indicated, it has fallen on hard times. And it is no longer the gem that it once was. I believe at one point the Chicago Cubs, when they would come for spring training, would stay in this facility. And I know there was a lot of Mother's Day brunches and all kinds of things that occurred on this site because it was one of the premier locations, but it is since not that anymore. And so, and I can get into as much detail as you'd like, but we have done an extensive amount of neighborhood outreach, starting with meeting from a representative of the Dobson Ranch HOA board, the community manager for them, having a neighborhood consultant going out door to door, having a neighborhood meeting that was well attended, as well as speaking with any resident that had any question that we had. We believe that we are very much consistent with the general plan, and I think Evan did a good job of that. And we're certainly okay with the conditions of approval and request this body's recommendation for approval. I do have a detailed presentation that I, again, could go into. I think Evan's done a great job. I think the staff report has laid that out. That with this board's permission, I will forego most of that presentation. But sitting in the study session, I'd like to probably proactively talk about a couple of things that I may have heard come up, maybe relative to our case, but certainly relative to other cases in the area. And it's questions that we've experienced as we've gone through this. So if that works for the board, I'll just go ahead and probably touch on two topics really quickly. The first deals with kind of the site plan and what we're proposing and the amenities. Because I know a question came up as we went through the process that there was a concern that we would be using the Dobson Ranch amenities. We sit on the very north edge of Dobson Ranch, and it is a wonderful community with lots of amenities. And so this is a blow-up of the amenity area, and it is specifically designed for this type of a resident that is going to come and live in here. And you'll see that there's more what I'll call adult-style oriented amenities in terms of what it is that we're proposing. You see that there's a pool and a spa area. You'll see that we've got kind of an outdoor lounge area. There is certainly a turf area. We've got outdoor kitchen dog park. So we do have a dog park. It's not in this. It's up in the north east corner of our site, but there is a dog park that is planned for these residents as well. And so we feel that with this type of resident and the amenities that we're offering, that although I can't stand up and say we'll never use that none of these residents will ever use Dobson Ranch, we believe that there is more than sufficient amenities to be able to work in this type of an environment. This is a perspective, I believe it was included in your packet, but of what we would envision that main amenity area to be. The other thing that I know I wanted to touch on, because the question was brought up, kind of deals with parking. And I had heard that in the study session and wanted to kind of proactively address that comment and concern about parking. And I have with me Dawn Cartier from CivTech. She is the one that prepared the parking study that was included in the staff report and packet. But one of the things that if you read that report, and if I can't answer questions, I know Dawn's available, but one of the things that report talks about is that car ownership is on the decline and has been for a number of years. And there has been a trend for lower parking rates at some of these, what I'll call mid-rise kind of garden, and it's anticipated that trend is going to continue. At the very peak in the early 2000s, this type of a development, you would expect to see an average of 1.62 parking spaces per dwelling unit. That trend has declined to, in this decade, what we're looking at is a trend of about 1.46 parking spaces per unit. And so when you start to look at it, and look specifically at this site and look at the parking generation manual that's provided by the Institute of Transportation Engineers, I think I got that right, and what they do, which is a national publication that I believe cities use, private developers use, everybody uses to look at, that when you start to look at this, they would categorize this type of a development really as needing 1.31 parking spaces per dwelling unit, which that, with the number of units that we are providing, would equate to about 377 parking units. If you look at what the 85th percentile is under that parking generation, it's roughly 1.47, and I know I'm throwing a lot of numbers out. At the end of the day, as you know from reading your report, we are requesting a deviation to 1.6 parking spaces per dwelling unit. One of the things that I know has kind of been touched on that's a little bit unique to the city of Mesa is that unlike other jurisdictions that we work in, when we're talking about a multifamily development of this type and scale, other jurisdictions have a tiered approach to parking. Mesa requires 2.1 and doesn't distinguish between a studio, a one-bedroom, a two-bedroom, or a three-bedroom. In this instance, most other municipalities that we work in generally have a requirement of one for a studio, one-bedroom, 1.5 parking spaces for a two-bedroom, and then when you start hitting 2 spaces per unit, usually you're looking at a 3-bedroom and above. This development does not have any 3 bedrooms. It is 60% studio and 1-bedroom apartments. And we do have some 2 bedrooms. So at the end of the day, when you start to break it down, it ends up that what we are proposing is more in line with industry standards, certainly in keeping with other jurisdiction, and at least the request has been supported by Don Cartier, our parking traffic consultant. And I know that the city that's something that they've looked at very closely as we've gone through the process. It is a gated community, and so all our parking will occur internally on the site. And so we think that that is a good thing that we are doing there, and certainly believe that we have more than sufficient parking, especially when you look at the unit mix and the makeup of this type of a development. And so with that, I know those were 2 of the main questions. I believe Board Member Boyle had some items. I'm not entirely certain which items he would like to discuss. And I know that there are residents here as well, but all in all, I'd like to just end with saying that we are excited to be here. We think this is an appropriate development for this location. It brings opportunities, a product that does not exist in this area. And Evan is correct. Staff has worked very diligently with us on ensuring that the quality is there. There, I know, has been a renewed push to elevate the architectural quality and the bar within the city of Mesa. And I can assure you that bar, whether we willingly held it or whether it might have got whacked on our heads a little bit, we believe, and I know staff would agree, that we are meeting that new bar, that new threshold for architectural design and quality. We think it provides new life to the area, new energy, and does provide opportunities for people to live near such wonderful job centers as the hospital, as MCC, and provides that housing element that exists, but not in this type of a form. And so with that, again, we're consistent with the general plan. I'm happy to answer any questions. And Madam Chair, if I may, I know that there are, I think, some cards that are speaking. Would certainly appreciate the opportunity to stand up after the neighbors speak.
Sure, absolutely. No problem. I think, do you have a question now?
Can I just a little bit about the company that's doing it? Because I know they have a history. Can you give just a little bit of information about them and similar developments that they've done? Because I know some of these parking ideas are from ones that they've used, and so they've got some knowledge that could be helpful for us. And then, do they typically continue to own their developments in perpetuity? Do they tend to sell them after a certain amount of time? Just some curiosity about the long-term viability of something like this.
Madam Chair, Board Member Boyle, that's a wonderful question. I'm checking my notes, but if I know that this Alliance Residential manages approximately 15,000 individual units. Now, some of those developments they own, some they manage on behalf of other people, but I know that they do manage approximately 1,500. This development, if approved, would be Alliance's 16th development since 2010. So they're certainly very active participants in the market. And I'll need to check with my client, but I believe historically they are a long-term holder. But if you'll give me 1 minute, let me confirm that. Madam Chair, Board Member Boyle, yes, I did confirm they do own and typically owned their properties for an extended amount of time.
Okay.
Up who submitted a card, and then we'll have you come back up afterwards.
Thank you.
All right. The first card I have is from Jean Stankowski. You would like to speak. If you could please be sure to state your name and your address for the record, and we'll give you 3 minutes, and there'll be a timer that you could see your time. Take it away.
Jane Stankowski. I'm the president of the Dobson Villa, the next door neighbor. I'd like to see this project go forward, but We do have one issue with the property, and that is the 4 stories. The next door neighbor, which is Dobson Villas, originally they wanted to have 3 stories, and they came to the conclusion that it's too many stories within that area. So they got 2 stories. Now, this development wants to have 4 stories. Within this neighborhood, within the corner, not the neighborhood, but the corner itself, we have 112 units, 288 units. Across the street, Stay America has got 130 units. Waterstone's got 166 units. Total of 900 new units within this intersection. And I was at the design meeting, and the design meeting, they had some issues with their parking. I understand that. And I understand what Brennan was talking about. But then they also had a dog park, surfed area, took about 3 or 4 spaces of parking. Not a very big deal because we don't want to have all of their issues dropped on us. And then we also have an issue with traffic. And the school has over 1,000 people during the school morning rush hour and the evening hour. And what happens, 900 units, traffic, this, that. This project could go forward, and I think it would go forward a little bit easier, past a little easier, if they would not go the 4 stories. And that would give more room for the parking. That'd also give more room for the turfed area for the dog situation. And the traffic would recede somewhat. I mean, we're going to have traffic, there's no question about it. And that particular property they're building on had 212 units, and they weren't always full. They was going back and forth. We could, it was no problem with the traffic. They want 288 units here. I want that property to be built, and we want it built because we want to get rid of the old buildings that over age, everything ages, you have to redevelop. I understand that. 30-some years these buildings have been there. So our issue is the traffic and the 4 stories. That's just a little bit much, but I don't want to scare these people and say, you're not going to have 4 stories, don't build it in here. We can't build it. Well, we won't make any profit unless we have 4 stories. So, and I'm in a position right now, like a rock and a hard place. I'd like to see this development pass, but find some way to decrease this traffic somewhat, more area for the dog situation, and also the thing for the traffic flow, because originally I was looking at the properties and they had 4 entrances and exits, and they're going to eliminate one of these entrances, the one coming in on Dobson Road. That was 100 feet, and the next entrance was a cut-away frontage road was 150 feet. They're going to eliminate one of these things. But what they could do, now they're going to have three entrances and exits. And the one when you come down the Dobson Road, you hang a right you go down Dobson and you hang a right. And they could also have a sort of a cutout there also, because they're going to have a gated community over here. And the rush hour comes in at this time, we're going to have traffic like you wouldn't believe. And whatever happens, that's fine. You people are the professionals, you take your decisions. You've already passed these. And I was at the design review, and I was very happy with that because they had them upgrade the different issues. I don't know what happened with their stucco thing, but they didn't want to have the stucco situation, but all these new buildings do have stucco, but not the rough stucco. It's the smoothest type things. And then the windows, the balconies, and all this stuff, I'm glad they upgraded that. So, and I'm also glad that you just give me 3 minutes, because last time I was here, just kind of got me and said, well, okay, bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
So that's it. That's all I have to say.
Gene, can I ask a quick question? That 900 units number, is that rental units or is that just dwelling units? in the
Well, we
area?
have condominiums at Dobson Villas, that's 112 units. Stay America is 130 units, that's a hotel. And then Waterstone, those are leased out apartments, that's 166. And these will be 280, added all up about 900, close to 900 units in that area. So, but I'm just kind of nervous about even saying anything about this. You can kind of understand, because I do know that all the new units that are going up are usually 4 stories. I understand that. But they're in particular areas where they can take 4-story units, like the one they have over on Southern Avenue over there, that's 4 stories, that's fine. But in our particular location here, that's kind of pushing it.
Oh, thank you. Well,
Any questions?
No, thank you so much, though, sir.
Okay.
I appreciate your comments.
Okay.
All right, I got one more card here. Okay, Phyllis Keller? you'd like to speak and you're opposed to this item? Hi, if you could please just state your name and address for us, and try to
Yes,
keep your comments to 3 minutes, but
I will certainly try.
Okay.
Yes, Phyllis Keller, and I live at 2117 West Isthmus Loop. And I am about 100 yards from the southwest corner of this new property, very close. I have some concerns. I was at the neighborhood meeting that they held and gave us a great deal of time and answered many hours worth of questions for us. I still came away with some fears, and I have agreement with the gentleman who just spoke about traffic congestion worries. We are told that just by changing the light, crossing Dobson, east and west from on Isabella, that light can be extended in the red phase, and that'll take care of the traffic jam that does occur every morning when the school buses come and so forth. The schools have not even been notified. Our Little Roads Elementary School has not even been notified. We're told that they don't expect any children or many children. I think 15 might have been what they estimated. 288 units and 305 residents, if I'm remembering correctly. Anyway, the schools need to be included, and I did go ahead and let the principal at our Little Rose Elementary know. I didn't go to Rhodes, but if they're going to be impacted at all, and I think you're underestimating, we all did at our meeting, underestimating the number of children who could very well move into these units. It is a high-end and very expensive by my standards situation, but they didn't have a plan B if there is any trouble with rentals. Why there are like, what, 60% are going to be studios for $1,000 a month for how many square feet? 600 square feet, I believe, whatever. And then the 2 bedrooms were $2,200 a month. And then you're drawing from, of course, MCC, which are mostly students. Of course, they're faculty. And then the hospital, and maybe those folks can afford something like this, but it's a very exclusive, high-end, stacked, compact unit with very tall buildings, and it doesn't fit with the rest of Dobson Ranch, and I'm afraid they're all going to be out there walking early in the morning when I'm out there walking around the lake every morning. So whatever, I have some selfish concerns, definitely, about their using our Dobson Ranch and not really putting anything back into that. And it's a big development, and I'm sort of old-fashioned on that, so that's all.
thank you very much.
Thanks,
for your
all
comments.
of you.
Thank you. Okay. I have another card here. Joanne, and Joanna, I'm sorry, I can't read the last name, but is there a Joanne? Oh, yes, thank you. Sorry about that. Well, it's just like you print it. I just thought, maybe I can't read the handwriting. But thank you so much. If you could state your name and address for us for the record, please.
Joanne Precup at 2360 West Impala Avenue. So I'm down the street from this complex. Okay, I was at the June meeting with the Alliance, and I questioned some of their assumptions, because they're saying up to 305 to 350 people will live there. But if you add up the numbers, I'm coming up with more like 640 or more. You have 49 studios, 129 single bedrooms, and 110 two bedrooms. So you figure there's going to be more than 2 people in a 2-bedroom, I think. So I question their, and also if we're talking 318 cars and I'm going 50% are car drivers. I don't think there's enough parking spaces, because the public transit is only buses along north-south Dobson. You don't have the light rail, so you're going to have a car, and plus you're living right next to the freeway, so of course you're going to have a car there. It's so convenient. Another problem I have is I live off of Impala, so the only way in and out of my neighborhood is Isabella. Isabella is a side street. It's not a through street. It curves around the lake to slow traffic down. It can't handle that amount of traffic. Now, I understand that Mesa traffic study was done when school was not in session. You know, and they're assuming that you can drive right through the 15-mile without stopping. Oh, please do look when school gets out and when there's no way you can drive right through at 15 miles an hour. There are people crossing, there's cars stopping. It's going to be one heck of a traffic jam. And then also the dog rest area is basically the size of 2 parking spaces. Now, you know they're going to go next door to the condos because they have nice green grass and a low wall. It's perfect for dogs. Oh, my goodness. In the height of the buildings, I have questions about that too. But mostly it's the traffic, and also that they're going to be using Lake One, Dobson Ranch Lake, to go around for exercise, you know, and just for the open space. Those are my concerns.
Thank you very much. Okay. We have a card from Lee Watson, wishes to speak. Mr. Watson, if you could just confirm state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Lee Watson. I live at 2146 West Isabella, next door to this proposed property or project. And I also want to see this property developed and improved, but the neighborhood is not going to be supporting a 4-story building. And if there is 4-story buildings, they should be restricted to the Dobson Road side of it rather than overlooking our property next door. The dog run of 2 parking spaces is really inadequate. And we are next door, so we're going to be picking up all of their dog stuff. And I would like to see a larger area to accommodate dogs so that they don't need to go somewhere else. I mean, a real pet park. And that would be something that would help alleviate our problems. The other problem I have is, besides the 4 stories, it should be 2 stories. Actually, when we built in 1985, we wanted to have 3 stories, and they said, no way, you can't do it. It's too much for the neighborhood. And I know things have changed a lot since 1985, but 4 stories is still too much. And I think they should be restricted to 2 or at maximum 3 stories. And more parking, at least 2 spaces per unit. The number of studios is a concern to me, because when you get just one, it ends up being a lot of Airbnbs, and that's a lot of traffic and a lot of parties, and it could deteriorate the neighborhood. So I would like to see some restrictions with regard to that, if you can do it. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Okay, and one final card from Ron Ritchie. I'm sorry, you did wish to speak? Check mark is like in between.
Hi, my name is Ron Ritchie. I live at 2135 West Isthmus Loop. Normally I'm where you guys sit, so Madam Chair, members of the board, I'm here only as a resident. I am actually the president of the Dobson Association HOA. Unfortunately, I'm not here in that capacity because I came at a late minute thinking that this was just a drainage problem or a drainage issue. I was unaware of Dobson Villas with their concerns. As a resident, I would definitely be opposed to a 4-story building. I would definitely be opposed to anything in a reduction of parking spaces. The amount of traffic that is currently generated at that intersection during certain times of the year, especially now with school, is actually quite intense. The main problem with the parking is any possibility of overflow onto Isabella would not be in the best interest of the neighborhood at all. I would like to see the corner developed. It definitely needs it. I would just caution with the 4 stories. I would also caution with limiting the parking. I would increase that parking. And I heard dog park. There are several cities now with dog parks that are closing them due to the amount of excrement, et cetera, causing disease. So Phyllis lives right around the corner from me, so and the dogs could definitely be a problem. I just heard another gentleman mention the Airbnb. We are also having a problem with that as an association, because in our CCNRs, we do not have a restriction on short-term rentals. That may be something that you guys can put into the restrictions, that they cannot be an Airbnb of any kind. We have some, as a president, I get to hear a lot of complaints rather than compliments. As far as the apartment people using the lake is there, they will definitely be using it, so. And I think I might have covered everything in a short period of time, so I know what it's like to only have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Madam
Okay.
Chair,
Yes.
if I may, can I just address a few things on the site plan really
Yes, sure.
quickly? So just for clarification, there's a number of building heights proposed with this development. The buildings along the west and the north property lines are 2 stories in height. The 4 stories occur more towards the center of the site and also on the Dobson Road frontage. And there are a few 3-story buildings at the Dobson and Isabella intersection there. One other thing, there is a fairly substantial grade change when you're going up to the US 60 interchange there. That section is at a significantly higher grade than the site is, which might help to mitigate some of those height concerns. I just wanted to clarify where those 4-story buildings occurred.
Could you put the site plan back up so that we can, I should have asked that while you were talking.
Madam Chair,
It lists it directly on the
if-
site.
There you go.
if I may, and I apologize, I know I haven't been called up, but I did have this exhibit prepared that if it goes to it, clearly identifies the building heights that are on it. And if you will see the what I'll call yellow buildings, outline buildings, those are the 4-story buildings I don't know if you guys are seeing it
Yeah,
yet.
we can see it now.
Perfect. So the yellow buildings are the 4-story buildings, considerably sucked away from Dobson Villas, sucked away from Isabella, and as Evan indicated, they are more towards the center of the site, Dobson Road, and toward the north. The green buildings, those are the 3-story buildings. There's 2, what I'll call rust orange. Those are 1-story buildings, and then you see the pink or fuchsia, whatever color you want to call that. Those are the 2-story buildings. So just for clarification to understand where the buildings are on the site.
Just a quick question. I just see one 4-story marked on here that's actually listed as 3-story on the site plan. Just want to see which one it actually is. It's the, so on the,
Oh,
just checking.
thank you for that clarification. I put this together, so I will own the mistake. This building right here,
That was right, yeah. This one.
I can't draw it.
This
Flip.
one right here.
that one right there. It's a 3-story building. I apologize.
Yeah, right on
The
the Dobson
southernmost one on
face.
Dobson.
Correct, the southern one on Dobson.
Okay. I'm sure you already have your responses to the comments from the public, so let's let you go ahead and go through those, and then we'll ask him
Can I
questions.
get one more, just clarification?
Okay.
The lake, anyone can access the lake, right? It's not restricted just to residents. It's open to anyone that's down there. There's just a certain number of people that live there, and that's who usually uses that, right?
Through the chair, Board Member Boyle, I would defer that to the HOA. I know that, for example, in the community that I live in, we do have lakes in that community, and those are HOA-maintained, controlled, owned, operated lakes. There are signs that are posted, at least in our community. Again, I can't speak for Dobson Ranch. That signs that are posted in our community to say that the use of those lakes is only for our residents. Notwithstanding that sign being up, I know that there are a fair number of people that come in, and I don't know that we in my community have HOA police that are going out there asking for cards to see if they're a member of this community or not.
Yeah. We'll probably ask staff, or we'll ask one of the,
It's not blocked, that's what I want to
Yeah.
know. Anyone could walk in there. It's not gated, it's not blocked.
well, why don't you go ahead and make your follow-up presentation to us?
Wonderful, thank you. Happy to do that. I think, I know there was a lot of discussion on height. Hopefully, I've addressed those comments. I can tell you that we have tried to be thoughtful and considerate in the design of our site, in that I know our closest building along Isabella, which is that one-story building, that is from building to building. So, well, this is a good one. So from our, that leasing office building on there to the closest residence across Isabella is about a third of a football field length away, about 113 feet. That three-story building that's near the A in the Isabella, that's approximately, again, 120-ish feet away. As Evan indicated, there is a considerable amount of separation and buffering that is occurring so that to our west, so that building to building, that's about 2/3 a football field length away, and is separated by mature, wonderful landscaping on their side. Our side will have landscaping, but we do have, again, a one-story and a two-story building and those parking canopies, and we've very purposefully pulled our buildings off. And as you can tell from the design of the site, it is oriented towards that open space area, and ensuring that, you know, we are being sensitive to the privacy of the adjacent property. And so I know there is height. There was questions about traffic. And this probably is as good a slide as I have to be able to talk about traffic and trip generation and kind of comparison with what the site at its present use, again, presuming that it was fully occupied. You can see that when we're talking about that existing motel in terms of average daily trips, it's a little bit shy of 2,000. We are coming in, even with 288 residences, right around 1,500. So there is a reduction in the amount of parking, amount of trips that this site would generate. Again, presuming that it was operating at full capacity as a hotel. And again, if I need to go into more on the traffic, our traffic engineer, Don Cartier, can speak to that. One of the things that we looked at too, I heard a comment about the intersection and capacity. This is a good comparison in terms of what our trips will add to that present capacity of Dobson Road, of Baseline Road, and Isabella. And you can see in the orange on Dobson and the orange on Baseline, and you can't really see it on Isabella, but we are going to add an additional 1% to the overall capacity. And you can see that clearly these roads are designed to carry more vehicles than are presently out there today. So we don't believe that if there is a traffic problem that's out there today, we are not going to contribute to that problem and make it worse, which is one of the key things when looking at traffic and traffic impact studies and stuff like that. The other thing that I heard dealt with schools, and this is give a good idea of the schools in the area. You can kind of see on the left-hand side Washington Elementary, and you can kind of see on the right-hand side the southeast portion of the side Rhodes Elementary. We did meet with Mesa Public Schools. We actually met with them, today is Wednesday, we met with them I think on Monday. It took us a while to get our meeting with them, but we did meet with them to talk about capacity and potential impact that this development might have on that. I know they said we don't have any concerns about potential impact that this development might have on the Rhodes facility, nor Dobson High. They said there's plenty of capacity at those types of developments. They needed to look at Washington Elementary and get back to us. Anecdotally, we heard at the neighborhood meeting through one of the residents that Washington was excited and happy to see any amount of children that we would generate to come to that building. school. I can tell you that it's kind of the field of dreams concept, though, and that if you build it, they will come. This development does not lend itself to a family-type development with lots of children. By the very nature of the mix of studio, 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms, just doesn't really lend itself to a lot of families. And as I mentioned, Alliance manages 15,000 units, and so they have an ability to extrapolate data. And we would estimate that this type of development, again, given how it's built and how it's going to be marketed, the type of amenities that are there, that, as I mentioned, more adult-oriented amenities. There is no tot lot. There is no children's play area. We would estimate that this development would have probably less than 10 children throughout the entire development. And again, that's data information that they have pulled from managing their property and building this product in other situations. And so I think those were some of the bigger ticketed items that I heard. If there was something that I missed, I apologize, but at least as I was taking notes, I think that was some of the items. And so with that, again, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have, but we would request your recommendation for approval.
Thank you. I mean, I have some questions for staff, but does anyone have any questions for the applicant?
There we go. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Suspense, waiting.
Yeah. Mr. Ray, one of the speakers mentioned the traffic signal at Isabella and Dobson and whether that could be optimized. Is that something you've looked at or talked about in this process, or do you know anything about that? And if that could help with congestion?
Absolutely. Madam Chair, Board Member Crockett, with all due respect, I will defer that question to Dawn Cartier. She, better than I, can speak to that optimization and stuff like that, because I know that there are a number of factors that come into play in that.
And then there was one other question. There was a comment about the traffic study being done when school was not in session. I just kind of wanted to follow up on that as well.
Good afternoon, Dawn Cartier, 10605 North Hayden Road, Scottsdale, Arizona. Through the chair, Board Member Crockett. The question first related to the traffic signal timing. What we were able to do is look at the traffic that was existing today, add our traffic on top of it. We obtained the traffic signal timing from ADOT and from the City of Mesa. So we looked at the whole corridor in terms of the information that we have available and could take a look at in terms of putting together a study for. Now, in this case, it kind of feeds into your second question. A traffic study was not required for this development, so we did some trip generation work originally, some distribution work to make sure that the turn lanes were of adequate length. Then we heard a lot of information from neighbors about their concerns, and then did a little more work to make sure we were addressing those. So our evaluation was showing that if we changed that traffic signal timing just slightly, we could get better flow through at the intersection of Isabella and Dobson. And that information has been provided, but there's a lot more to that intersection than meets the eye, because it's so close to the freeway that it is currently progressing so that things will flow in and off of the 60 at the appropriate interval that ADOT would like it to flow. That doesn't mean that it can't be changed. It just means that Mesa, working with ADOT, they need to study that now. So that is information we have handed off and is being looked at or is set for evaluation by the city and by ADOT.
So if I understand it correctly, then that's something that you'd need City of Mesa and ADOT approval to make any changes to that?
That is
to
correct.
The timing of the signal?
That is correct, yes.
Okay.
Yes. And then as to the question about the traffic study being done when school wasn't in session, this didn't require a traffic study. So we did some work as it related to information we were hearing about congestion, and we went out and drove the routes to measure travel time, and then we adjusted those to account for when school is in session, because there was a lot of discussion about that. But that's true. That work that we did at the time came from the neighborhood meeting in the summer. So then we took that information, added school traffic back in, and readjusted our evaluation for that.
Madam Chair? Yeah, can I add just a little additional information to that? I spoke with our transportation department before the meeting today. They've reviewed the proposal, and they don't anticipate any issues with the traffic system. The roads have adequate capacity for this type of development. They also relayed to me that they would be happy to look at signal timing, potential changes there once the development has been built and they have a better idea of how everything is operating. Thank you.
Would that be something that would come at the request of staff or the property owners, or how would that come into play?
Madam Chair, it could actually be either. Staff could request that. Our transportation department also has an online form where residents can request a traffic person to look into the traffic a little more in detail.
Okay. So they were okay, just fine with the signalization as it is and the timing and everything without any?
They said they would be happy to look at the timing. It's just not really something that you can do before you get everything
Before, you have to see
built.
what
They
the
need
impacts
to,
might be.
exactly.
Oh, okay.
Madam Chair, if I may, I stepped away for a moment. I think I heard the conversation, but I was visiting with Tom Lewis, who is with Alliance Residential, and if we are happy to go back and look at that once the development is constructed and fully leased and operating at capacity. We don't have a problem going back and visiting with the city again to say, hey, look, is there changes that are appropriate now that we're up and operating? And just for an idea in terms of timeline for when that would take place, presuming we can get through it from the time that we would, I guess, put a shovel in the ground until stabilization occurred, that's roughly 30 months, so a little bit shy of 3 years for that process to play out and then for us to be able to come back in and visit with the city about it.
Okay. Thank you. I do have a question. It's probably a two-part, one for you and one for staff. Is the short-term rentals, the Airbnb. I don't think the city has the authority through state statutes to regulate those, but if I heard something in the planning world lately that the cities may have been given a little bit more authority, but just on certain things, that maybe if you could touch on that would be helpful for the neighbors.
Chair, members of the board, that's correct. There is a state statute that prohibits cities and towns from, you can't prohibit short-term rentals, but the recent legislation was passed that allows a little bit more regulation of short-term rentals. And that's something that cities are, I know we're looking at those, but we cannot prohibit short-term rentals. There are just certain things that we can regulate. And off the top of my head, I'm trying to think of what some of those are, but I'm not sure certain.
Maybe it's a code violation type of a thing, right? Like if it's noise, excessive noise, or any nuisance types?
You can require contact information for the owner. There could be some things like nuisance and things like that that allows us to regulate, but we cannot prohibit short-term rentals.
Yeah, so we can't do anything, but if you could address maybe if the owner anticipates having any, the ability to have short-term rentals at the property.
Do they have them in their other properties?
Happy to do that. Madam Chair, members of the board, I think it's a two-part question. One, the initial question is whether or not the developer, whether Alliance has any plans to use any of these units as an Airbnb. The answer to that question is no. They are interested in ensuring that there is not a lot of turnover, that they create this community where people want to be there long-term. And so Alliance themselves has no plans to Airbnb or set aside a certain number of units for that. The second part of the question, I think, that you're asking me is whether or not we will allow tenants to sublet, which then in turn could lead to an Airbnb type situation. And the answer to that question is no as well. There are provisions in the lease that will restrict them from subletting or from a tenant leasing to a third party or someone else that doesn't have that privity of contract, as the legal expression goes, with the original owner.
Thank you. Thanks. I think that you addressed what I was writing down as public comments, but do any of the other board members, do you have anything that we missed or he might have missed? Or do you have any questions for the applicant or staff?
Can I ask a little one about, so I know you're planning to bring in there's a discordance that I'm trying to get figured out. You're trying to bring in a good development. You've done good developments elsewhere. And yet I hear from staff, we worked over and over and over again to bring up the quality of the development. So I'm wondering maybe this is staff, maybe this is from you, was the development intended to be a much lower quality development, and because of the negotiations with staff, it's now raised in quality, and does that, I mean, I guess the fear is that this is going to come in and stink somehow, right? Which we don't want to do. None of us want to happen. So the question is, what was that exchange? What was that need for higher quality that happened? And is that, it reflects somehow on how this site is looked at and the quality that Mesa is expecting and getting? That's sort of my question.
Madam Chair, Board Member Boyle, when we came in, we thought we had a high-quality development that was appropriate for the area. As I'd indicated, and as this group is well aware, the bar has been moving up in the city of Mesa and the expectations for that quality. And so in working with Nana and Evan to see what we could do to better reflect some of those global changes that have been occurring in Mesa. And a lot of it dealt with what I'll call the gingerbreading type stuff, the materials, the colors, how we were treating balconies and things of that nature. I don't believe we had any real discussion or back and forth, if you will, on the form. What I'll call the meat and potatoes of it. We were just dealing with the gingerbreading type of stuff and materials. The other thing that I would tell you in terms of how do you ensure that that quality is there, obviously you have those elevations that are in your packet. We have the feedback from the DRB. But additionally, there are a number of stipulations that address some of that gingerbreading type stuff that we talked about and that we agreed to, but from a timing perspective, just didn't ever make it onto the elevations that were presented today. And those are conditions of approval number 4, 5, 6, and 7 of the packet. And if you look at those 4 conditions of approval, they are all focused specifically on the elevations and on the quality that we expect, that Alliance expects as the developer, and the city expects as we've gone through this process. As with any process, there is a level of collaboration, and as you well know, Board Member Boyle, architecture and what it looks like and what it can be very subjective. And so we're dealing in kind of this gray area in a lot of instances, but we believe, and I know staff believes, that what we are presenting to the board and what we will present to the council represents the standard, the new standard that has been set in the city.
Madam Chair, can I add just a little bit to that? This wasn't a poor quality development by any means when it first came in. Mesa has a very high bar for quality, and we expect quality development throughout the city. But this intersection specifically is a very important intersection for the city. So we wanted to make sure that this was next level quality, that it exceeded what we expected, honestly, at this intersection. So it's not that it was poor quality. We expect high quality. We just expect extra high quality, I guess you can say, at this specific intersection.
Thank you. Are any other questions of the applicant or staff?
Can I ask again about the 10 children? That seems really low. But that's I mean, I guess we just have to go with your word on that you think there'll be only 10 children staying in the 288 units that are here?
Madam Chair, Board Member Boyle, that is our best guess. Again, extrapolating data that Alliance has from all the other developments that they have in operation, that is our best guess in terms of a number. I'm not going to stand up here and say that we're going to have a maximum of 10, and I'm not going to stand up here and say we're going to have a minimum of 10. That is our best guess today. Again, when you look at it, as I mentioned, in terms of the unit mix, in terms of the amenities, following that Field of Dreams concept, this isn't designed to be as attractive to a family as some other developments might be that has a tot lot, that has 3-bedroom units and things like that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's time to deliberate amongst ourselves, or if there's someone ready to provide a motion one way or another, I'll entertain it.
Well, I would move that we approve this item. I don't know if there's any discussion that needs to take place. I've listened to the comments today. I think the applicant has attempted to be very open with the neighborhood in terms of what's happening there. I think they've tried to address concerns that have been raised. I heard a couple of times today that we want this development because of what's there. And, you know, this is a, you know, we review what comes along to this board, and this looks like a very good project to me. I think it's been thoroughly vetted, and I understand there's no project that's a perfect project from everyone's perspective, but I think this is a quality project, and I don't have any trouble supporting it today. So I would move that we approve this item.
I would second that.
Thank you, Board Member Allen. One thing just to clarify, so you're recommending approval because it has to go on to City Council. So
I'm sorry, recommending approval. And yeah, that's right. Thank you.
no, you're welcome. Thank you. Okay.
Madam Chair, with conditions.
Oh, with the condition.
Okay.
You can go ahead.
The
and
third
rephrase
try
it.
is a
Yeah.
charm here.
Yes.
I would move that we recommend approval of this item to the City Council with the staff amendments, or the staff stipulations, and
Thank you.
recommended approval.
Thank you. Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Oh, sorry, Shelley. There is a second. Okay, everyone, please vote. Okay.
And I vote aye.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so the item passes, not unanimously, but it does pass on to the City Council. When will the City Council hear this item, in case the neighbors want to know?
It's going to be introduced on, it will be introduced on September 9th, and for action on September 23rd.
Are residents able to provide comments at the introduction to the council meeting, or only when they hear it later in the month?
From my experience, I mean, if they continue to give us a comment, that's something we can incorporate into the report. But for action, for introduction, typically just on the agenda for information purposes is when the action is being taken place. That's when the neighbors come in for comments and all that.
So if you're interested in the City Council, contact staff or go on to the city's website just to verify the City Council dates, and then you'll have some more opportunity to make your comments known. Thank you.
Well,
all right, now we'll move on to item 4C. This is case ZON 19-00357 in District 5 within the 8,000 through 8,100 blocks of East McKellips Road, located west of Haas Road on the south side of McKellips on approximately 40 acres. The request is to rezone from RS 35 to RS 15 PAD and a site plan review to allow for the development of a single residence subdivision. And Ryan McCann is our staff planner. Oh, yes. Yeah, why don't we go ahead and also incorporate into your presentation the plat from 5A? Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. Case before you this evening is ZON 19-00357. Oops. There we go. And also the preliminary plat. We'll take a look at the subject property. It's 40 acres located south of McKellips Road, east of the Red Mountain 202 freeway, surrounded by existing residential to the north and east of the development, residential zone property to the west and south, that is BLM land. The request is rezone that 40 acres from the current zoning district of RS 35 to an RS 15 with a PAD overlay, and that will accommodate the development of a single residence subdivision. As we take a look at the site plan, you'll notice that the lots are clustered together. This gives way to open space. As you can see, there's 404 washes kind of in the northwest corner of the property, as well as in the southeast corner. Various open spaces scattered throughout, as well as various amenities kind of in that central corridor. As presented to you at study session, the applicant has added an additional condition of approval to limit those properties along the east portion of the site to single story based on feedback from neighbors throughout this process. The general plan designation is a neighborhood. It falls within the large lot rural area, specifically within the desert uplands. When we get into the desert uplands, it's really intended to kind of preserve the natural desert landscape, whether that's through kind of large lots with on-lot preservation or through kind of a cluster development, specifically with common space to create that natural desert landscaping. As part of the request, they're requesting a planned area development overlay. They're requesting variation in the lot size into various setbacks, for instance, the front, side, and rear, in addition to the increased lot coverage. With that, reason for those requests and some of the justification, as you kind of cluster that development and try to create more of that open space, some of those setbacks need to be tailored a little bit. Further justification for those reductions in setbacks and increased lot coverage is they are providing approximately 28% of the site as open space in addition to preserving those 404 washes. Something to note with the density is the RS15 PAD per the zoning ordinance does require or only allows a maximum of 2.9 dwelling units per acre, and they do fall under that threshold. They did do a citizen participation, notified property owners within 1,000 feet, HOAs within a half mile, registered neighborhoods within 1 mile. Had a neighborhood meeting back in June. Approximately 23 neighbors attended. Staff was in attendance for that. Comments brought up by citizens present related to preservation of the native plants, any kind of native animals and kind of that disruption there. Preservation of the washes, the traffic this project would create along McKellips Road, kind of the lighting out there, and then what type of home products would be offered, and that also kind of brought up the single-story, multi-story, but the applicant has addressed that with that stipulation. To summarize, the case conforms to the general plan, also the Chapter 22 of the zoning ordinance for the planning and developments. Staff is recommending approval with conditions, with the modified conditions of approval as presented to you in the study session. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for staff this time? No, I thought you were pushing your button.
I thought about it, but I'm good.
You're good for now. Okay. Thank you. Would the applicant like to give us a presentation?
Madam Chair, members of the board, my name is Andy Barron. I'm here on behalf of Blanford Homes. My address is 50 North McClintock Drive in Chandler. I understand there's a couple of neighbors here potentially would like to speak this evening. I'm more than happy to go through the presentation currently, but defer to the board if you would rather hear some of those comments first. We're certainly in agreement with staff's recommendations of approval. We accept the additional stipulation. I guess I'll defer to you and how you'd like me to address.
Yeah, if you like, well, we could go ahead and have the two people come up, and then you can address their comments at that time.
That's fantastic. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right. All right. So the first card we have is from Bill Dosher. If you could come up and state your name and address for the record, please, and we'll give you 3 minutes.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bill Docksher, 8120 East Kramer, proud resident of Mesa. I live in Desert Shadows, which is the community directly across from the proposed development. And I basically want to convey, excuse me?
To the north, is that?
I'm to the north, yes. I wanted to convey 2 comments, if I might. The first would relate to the zoning change request to go from RS35 to RS15 pad overlay. And specifically with regard to that, I wanted to, again, mention that the desert uplands area where the proposed development is really a gem. And from that perspective, I mean, it's a gem from the residential perspective. There's not any commercial buildings out there. And in particular, if we consider the 2 square mile area that is roughly bounded by McKellips Road on the south, McDowell Road on the north, Ellsworth on the east side, and 77th Street on the west, the lots in that area are predominantly significantly larger in size. The smallest ones are about a half acre. There are some that are 10 acres, multiple acres. I don't know what mathematically the average is, but it's up there. Concomitant with that, the city of Mesa has the lots currently zoned for 35,000 square feet, which is very compatible with existing. And the proposal is to further increase the population density with over 100 homes on this 40-acre property. And I'd like to just add an editorial comment. I have nothing against Blandford. In fact, I lived quite happily in a Blandford house for 13 and a half years. So nothing, absolutely nothing personal there. But I would like to say that many of us that live in the region moved there because of the larger lots, the semi-isolation from the city, and the feel of the community that has to offer. And I feel that if we change the zoning from RS35 to RS15 pad, that will detract significantly from the existing state of the community there. I also feel that in that regard, it's a disservice to the residents who have moved there. And furthermore, that Blandford has demonstrated the capability to build and sell quite effectively homes on larger properties, such as the communities that they're building in the Groves right now. So it's not a question of they can't sell the housing. It's a question of they want to have smaller lots for one reason or another. That's their concern. But I guess to summarize that concern, I would love to see that the RS35 was at least maintained to RS15 with no pad overlay, so that there were larger lots that were more compatible with the rest of the community. I do have another comment. It's all right if I go on? I'll keep it short.
I think, no, is that?
We ran it over.
Oh,
I hit the 3 minutes, but I'll keep this one really short.
yeah, go ahead, because it looks, there is a problem with the clock, but go ahead.
The second concern, or the second comment, I guess, would be the proposed entrance to the Montaluma community would be right across from the Desert Shadows community. So you'd have an area right that there's a median in the center. The one side, on the north side, is 3 lanes. McKellips is 3 lanes. The south side, my understanding is it will be enlarged to accommodate the increased traffic for the Montaluma subdivision. But I feel that there's going to be a lot of congestion there, a lot of potential for accidents. I can see a light going in there. There is the width of the median, and there's sufficient frontage for the proposed development that the 2 entrances could be staggered to avoid some of this.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Then we'll have the applicant come back up and address some of those
Thank you for your time.
questions that you have. Thank you. Let's see. And William Petro?
Thank you, Madam Chairman and the board.
Just one second. Can we reset the clock for Mr. Petro so that it's, there you go.
Okay, thank you.
If you could also just state your name and address.
William Petro. I currently live in Scottsdale, North 137th. However, I own a property in Mountain Bridge. So I have several of the same concerns as the previous speaker, but from a slightly different perspective. My property is on North Channing, which would be to the southeast of the proposed development within the Mountain Bridge community. It's in that lower, I guess, to the lower left of the development that's shown there. My main concern with this proposed development is that when we purchased that property, basically the backyard has a view out over that open space. And that was our understanding at the time we purchased it. In fact, the property itself came with a lot premium for that purpose. So we're along with several other properties that basically back up against that open space. This was somewhat of a surprise when we found that there was going to be development here. We were told this was BLM land that would not be developed. And that was part of the reason we purchased there. Again, as with the previous speaker, we really appreciated the quiet, the kind of some removal from the busy city traffic and so on. Just a very nice, quiet neighborhood with very nice sunset views in the evening, over this open area. It's just very enjoyable. However, now this proposed development would greatly impact that. And I'm sure several of the other residents along that same portion of Mountain Bridge. So as proposed, the change goes from RS35 to RS15 PAD, which is with lots of on the order of 7,000 square feet. Yet RS15 would be 15,000, so they're proposing quite a high density compared to both the RS15 as well as the original RS35. So again, as with the previous speaker, I have the same concerns: the traffic, the additional density of housing impacting the view in our particular case, and then also impacting the ability to just enjoy that open space for hiking and so on. So from my point of view, the RS35 would be much preferable to the proposal, or even an RS15 without the overlay. At least stay within the 15,000 square feet. That would certainly mitigate that impact. I think those are my comments. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we don't have any more blue cards, so if the applicant would like to come back up and address some of those concerns.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Certainly appreciate the feedback from the neighbors. As staff had kind of gone through in their presentation, the existing property lies within certain developed areas. To the north, we do have several properties that are also zoned RS15 PAD, and of course the Mountain Bridge project to the east, which is RS15 PAD. So as we looked at this, we studied the area and considered the fact that we are in a transition zone. We are kind of going closer to the freeway corridor itself. And effectively, the RS15 PAD that was within the Mountain Bridge development itself is actually at 40 use per acre. So we have taken a look at that and considered that we are providing something that is much less dense. And certainly the Desert Uplands character area does allow us the flexibility through what is considered a conservation subdivision, where we're preserving the natural open space corridors, we're maximizing the benefit of those corridors for the residents within the neighborhood, preservation of wildlife transition areas, connections to natural trail corridors. Those we all believe are a benefit to this development and to the adjacent communities. So we feel that that transition and the way that we've site planned it, as you see in this particular map, is pretty consistent with the rest of the area. And frankly, the density, from Mountain Bridge at 40 use per acre to 2.7, as you approach the freeway corridor, somewhat counterintuitive because you would think that intensity would increase. But in this case, we agree that because of the adjacent properties and the way that things have developed, that density does make sense. To answer a couple of other questions that we heard, specifically about the entrance from McKellips, we do have our engineer here. If there are questions that I can't answer, we certainly can have him come up and address them. But as we look at how the city typically asks us to align, it's for avoidance of conflict. So the entrance here on our particular project to the south is aligning to the north entry of the adjacent residential development. The reason that typically occurs is for us to avoid left turning movement conflicts. It wasn't even really an option for us to locate it in any other location. This has to do with deceleration lanes and turn pockets into the project from medianized locations. So as we think about that, that is, generally speaking, one of the most critical components for us. We are improving McKellips Road at our frontage to a full right-of-way width, which is required by the city of Mesa. That will be dedicated, obviously, and the HOA, which this is a separate HOA from Mountain Bridge, will maintain that landscape frontage and everything on site. With respect to the BLM property, I think we all know I've been doing this for quite some time. The BLM often sells property for development. And, the remainder of this property is BLM property as well. At some point, highly likely that it may be sold for development as well. So Blandford was the company that was able to win that auction in December of 18, and therefore we're actually coming forward to you with proposed development for residential. So as we look at the site plan, the organization of the units themselves, we felt that it was more appropriate for us to preserve those natural open space areas As staff had indicated, we have over 28% of our site as open space, a density at 2.7 DUs per acre, which is certainly less than the 2.9 that's permitted. And with that, I'm happy to answer any other questions you may have.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for the applicant? Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Any questions for staff? Any comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'm ready to make a motion if you can hear me.
For staff, more just concerns about the density. And density is relative, right? We've seen some very high density projects come before us today. But given the character that this area has tried to retain, large lot rural, I just don't see that presented today. You can throw out 20%, and that's a calculation of what's open space, and I would hope that, washes wouldn't be graded over and developed. But it's a number, and it's not a feel. And so I just have concerns that we're losing some of the character of the areas that they've tried to maintain, which was that large lot, rural type of development. And again, you can compare what's close or what's else in the area. I wasn't part of approving any of those. I would like to see some of our particular neighborhoods that have very defined character retained, and I just don't see that today. So it's just a concern. No questions or comments. I just wish it had more of that rural large lot feel.
So is it that the land to the north and to the east, it's the similar zoning that's proposed, but those lots were developed larger? Is that basically what happened?
Chair, members of the board, the property to the north is zoned RS15 P80 as well. I do believe they have a little bit larger lot size, but as we get into the Mountain Bridge to the east, that is an RS15 P80 as well, similar to what the applicant is proposing, and I believe that the lot sizes are just a little bit bigger than what was approved in that Mountain Bridge community to the east.
But this is still in conformance with the general plan, the zoning designation.
Madam Chair, that is
range
correct.
of-
Once you get into, in the general plan, the desert uplands, it does permit that RS15 P80, so long as is that conservation subdivision preserving more open space.
Okay. Any other comments? I mean, I see what you're saying, but I think the fact that they're preserving the open space, that's on there in the wash. There's the preservation plan that they'll have to adhere to, but that's not what you're concerned with. You're concerned with the lot size.
Right, and I fully acknowledge, Ryan's on point. I'm certainly not going to argue with the planner in terms of what's allowed and what's used, what is allowed to be built there. It's more about the character of that area, and I know that those residents have been very particular about wanting to maintain the feel, and sometimes the numbers don't equate to a feel for a neighborhood. And so that's, again, my concern. Fully respect Ryan's opinion, and no additional questions to be answered, but I just have remaining concerns.
Thank you. Okay, entertain a motion.
Can you hear me okay? If I make a motion, can you hear it?
Yes.
Okay. I would like to recommend that we approve PZ 19094, ZON 19-00357, District 5, within the 8,000 through 8,100 blocks of East McKillips Road, south side, located west of Hawes Road on the south side of McKillips Road, rezoned from RS35 to RS15 PAD, and site plan request. That we recommend approval with the staff's recommended conditions, along with number 5A, item number 5A, PZ 19096, Montaluna, District 5, within the 8,000 through 8,100 blocks of East McKillips Road, south side, located west of Hawes Road on the south side of McKillips Road, a preliminary plat. And also that I would recommend that we recommend approval with conditions.
Thank you, Board Member Allen. Is there a second?
I will second that motion.
Oh, yes, sir.
Madam Chair, Board Member Allen,
Yes.
there was a revised condition that we presented during the study session.
Board Member Allen, could you just rephrase your motion to reflect that revised conditions?
Yes, please include the revised conditions that were discussed in the staff review.
Does that work? Okay, all right, now is there a second? Oh, I'm sorry, there was a second. Okay,
Yeah, I'll
everyone,
second that.
please vote.
My vote is A.
Okay. Okay, the motion passes with Board Member Villanueva Saucedo as a nay, and Board Member Sarkisian is absent. Okay, so is there any other business to discuss, Mr. Apia?
Okay, we'll see you in 2 weeks. Thank you very much.
Okay, is there a motion to adjourn the meeting? So moved. A second?
I'll second that.
Double second. Okay, everyone please vote.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you, Board Member Allen.
Thank you.
See you next time. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, thanks, bye.
The meeting is adjourned.
Sounds like she has.